Welcome to Money Talks. I'm Liam Dann, New Zealand Herald Business Editor at Large. This is a podcast where we talk to New Zealanders about money and how it has shaped their lives. We're not going to tell you how to get rich. We're not even going to pick the next interest rate move. But we are going to get you thinking about your relationship with money and what it really means to you. With me today, I have Brendan Lindsay, founder of manufacturing success story Sistema, and since selling the business for more than $600 million in 2016, a passionate investor, horse breeder, and philanthropist. Brendan, is that? Did I cover it there? How's that introduction? What do you?
I think that's probably pretty accurate, Liam, but I'm not quite sure.
Someone said to me, "Don't say rich lister. It's a bit lazy." Do you get that though? Yeah.
Oh, you do, but you sort of can't help things. I guess that when we sold the business, it was public knowledge.
Yep.
We tried to stop that actually.
Yep.
But it was a Fortune 500 company in America,
right,
and
yeah.
we had no choice. But I guess that was a big problem for my wife and I.
You had to learn to adjust to dealing with that level of public attention.
Well, we didn't want public attention because at the end of the day, it was a family business. We built the business up and we sold it obviously for an enormous amount of money, but we still want to go down to the local dairy and get our groceries without people, But to be honest, it actually was probably I didn't need to worry about it because it hasn't really made too much difference.
Oh, that's good to hear. I mean, and ultimately that, the fact that it was so public was because of the success. It was just such a huge success story. And we'll get to that, but I was interested to start back in your childhood memories of money and beginnings and things. Do you recall the first time you'd have ever held money in your hand, or do you have a memory of getting pocket money?
Well, we didn't get pocket money when we were kids, and we were encouraged to make our own way in life, which we all did. And we'd go mushrooming or do odd jobs for neighbours or friends, or pick up pine cones or get powers and sell them to neighbours. And that was. I mean, I think everybody was the same back then. I don't think anybody had any money for pocket money.
Yeah, New Zealand was was definitely a more sort of egalitarian place. Whereabouts did you grow up?
I grew up in Pukera Bay, so I went to a very small primary school, went to college at Tawa College. Yep. But I remember as a child, as a birthday present, you could buy a pie. Yeah. It was $1. Yeah. And they used to deliver pies to school. And, it was an absolute highlight of the year to have a pie. Since then, I've become a bit of a pie fanatic.
Fair enough. So I guess obviously you weren't growing up with a lot of money. What did your parents do?
My dad was a travelling salesman. Mum was a stay-at-home mum. There was 5 of us. Yep. And prior to that, Dad had a 4-square store, which had been inherited from his father who passed away. And Dad never really wanted to be a grocer. Yep. So I don't remember the store, or just brief memories, but. Dad was selling clothing, women's clothing, and he was good. And we had a good life. We were not rich, but we had a good life. We always had clothes on our backs, and it was fun. Yeah, and in terms of those things like getting a pie for your birthday was a treat. Were there other things that you ever you had your eye on as a kid? Well, I remember buying my first push bike. Yeah, and I remember buying my first watch, and going down to Pororua to the jewellers, and with my mother paying £4.17 for a watch. But if you wanted a watch, there was no other way you were going to get it, unless you actually did some work.
Sure. So you had part-time jobs and things, or after school work from early days.
Yeah, part-time jobs, and the school holidays. I used to always work every school holiday, and I quite liked it too. Yep. It was good fun. Yeah,
yep. And how about school? Were you an academic kid or?
Hopeless.
Yeah, I was told that you didn't thrive in that environment, right?
Yeah, I didn't thrive, and actually, I can't spell,
right?
And I can spell to some degree, but I've never been able to spell. Yeah, and I guess it goes right back to primary school, which held me back at high school because, of course, the written word was difficult for me. Yep. So. I was always regarded as the dunce of the family. My father used to say to me I was going to end up on a park bench with a newspaper on me, which was not a lot of encouragement.
No, but obviously schools and education are much better at picking up dyslexia and all these things now. But it does strike me, a lot of stories, the kids who have that kind of difficulty in school, if they can get past the bit where you end up on the park bench, if you can get past that, often that sort of brain goes on to quite a lot of success. There's a lot of people who, once they get, find a pathway, something about things just suddenly starts to click.
I often think about that, and I often think about my own business career and what would have been, not so much what I could have done, but what else I could have done, I guess. I've been lucky because I've surrounded myself with good people and who take up that sort of slack. But I got a school certificate in bookkeeping, which was quite interesting because I only ever went to the bookkeeping class twice. Once was at the start to sign in, and the second time was to sit the exam. Yeah. And I actually passed School C bookkeeping, and I'd never actually read it. It just absolutely came naturally to me. And I remember going to School C exam and the teacher saying to me, "Who was I?" Yeah. And I said, "Well, you really got a choice to make. Really let me sit the exam or own up the fact that I haven't been in your class all year."
Yeah. So something about the numbers you had a knack for. Yeah.
And I still remember numbers, and I can look at a balance sheet or look at numbers, and I remember them. Yep. In fact, I can't remember people's names, but I can remember things, and I can add up in my head. Yep. And which has helped me a lot in business. Yeah. So what was the I guess the leap or the lucky break in terms of, like you not ending up on that park bench like your dad said? There must have been something when you left school that gave you a nudge to start your own business, or. Well, I was actually selling women's clothing as a commission agent.
Right. So you sort of followed your dad's.
Followed Dad, and he helped me into that. I actually, when I left school, I joined the New Zealand Air Force and did a cook's course. Yep. And then I went out and worked in restaurants, but I got a break to go out in the selling world, and I enjoyed it. I travelled and one thing and another, but I called on a gentleman in Paraparaumu from Ballantyne's who women's clothing or outfit, and he got me out to the back room one day, and he said to me, he had a little square disc about the size of a dice, and he bought them in from England, and he said to me, "You should make these little sizing discs. They go on top of coat hangers, which designates the size." Yeah, I think
they still have them on some.
They still have them, and he said to me, "Look," he said, "half of the people in New Zealand don't want to work, and half the people that do want to work don't want to go into business for themselves, and half of those people that go into the business for themselves are just dead unlucky, or they don't have the acumen." And he said to me, "You are in the top 5% of New Zealanders," because he said, you want to work for yourself, you've got a good idea, this is a good idea, blah, 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 go out and start your own business. And I left there so charged.
That's
and
great.
The comments of sitting on a park bench left me behind. And I went home and told my mother about it, and she was darning one of my father's socks, darning the socks. And my Dad came home from golf, and I told my dad, and he said, I was married at that stage, I was only 19, but I was married. And Dad said, "I played rugby with a fellow in Auckland that was into plastics. I'll ring him." Yeah. And Dad rang him at 9 o'clock that night and told him I would be in Auckland at 8 o'clock in the morning, and we were living in Wellington. And I got in the car, drove to Auckland, had a meeting with the guy, made the little round sizing disc, got in the car and drove back home again. And that was the start of the business. Wow. And then I made the coat hanger that went underneath the sizing disc. And to this day, most of my friends call me Hanger.
Because you're the coat hanger guy.
Because the coat hanger guy.
Oh, and so you while you were energized from that talk you'd had from that guy, you acted. Like you didn't wait and think about it for too long. You just.
And I travelled from one end of New Zealand to the other, trying to sell coat hangers and sizing discs. And my biggest goal during the winter time was to get home in time for rugby practice on Thursday night, and then we'd pack up orders all day. We'd work all night, pack them up on Friday, and then get them off to the post office. And when you're working for yourself, and you do, yes, there's some lumps and bumps, but there's a really good feeling about when people pay you and money goes in. Yep. And yes, we had some tough times, but boy, you learn on the way through. Yeah. One of the things a couple of things I ask in the show is, one is what's the poorest you've ever been with it? When you talk about tough times, there were the times when you were worried about making payments and things month to month. Oh, look, we were talking about this on Saturday night because I had a birthday party and we had some friends around. But I was playing rugby for Leamington down in Cambridge, and I used to run to rugby on training on Tuesdays and Thursdays and run home because I couldn't afford to buy a beer. Yeah. And I was embarrassed about being in the club rooms and not being able to afford to buy a beer because we really were broke.
Yeah.
So I'd run to the training, run back, and told everybody I was just trying to get fit. But the simple fact of the matter is I was embarrassed about it. And two of my friends who I played rugby with way back then, 30-odd years ago, they were talking about that and said, I remember when it was like that you could not afford to buy a jug of beer.
Yeah. So at that point you had the business, everything was going into the business, I guess.
Well, it was, and we were in the garage at home.
Yep.
And, just paying the rent was a big enough struggle, and getting people to pay you and all those types of things, and you have the odd little bad debt, which really knocks your tail in. But, those sacrifices, they didn't feel like sacrifices at the time. It just seemed the norm, and it was just fun.
Yep.
And, of course, eventually you do go and have a beer with the boys.
Yeah, well, that's what I was going to say. At some point, you got ahead of it on the revenue, I guess, and when you finally had a little bit of money in your pocket, was that it? I mean, were the things that a car and all the rest of it?
Well, it was funny. So obviously, I wanted a new car, and I wanted a house that was a new house, one thing another. But I never really had any, and still to this day, had ambitions with helicopters and things like that. It's just not things that material things really never drove me. I guess I was trying to prove something, not too much to the world, but to myself, that I could actually do it. Yeah. And when I found out that I could, life became really enjoyable.
Sure. So Sistema itself, did the coat hanger business just grew and grew until you had you start. The story goes that you started Sistema in 1982. Is that right?
I started the hanger business in 1982.
Right.
And Sistema came probably about 6 years later.
Right. Sort of evolved out of that.
Well, what happened was, funnily enough, I was actually in Sydney at a rugby game where the All Blacks were playing, and I was standing outside a pub having a beer.
Yep.
And a gentleman walked up and said to me, do you know a guy called Grant Webster? And I said, well, I do actually. He's inside having a beer. And he said, well, he dated my sister. And this bloke lived in Atlanta. Anyway, we got quite friendly through the night, and he came and stayed with me in New Zealand. And he was in the drink bottle business,
right,
as a salesman. Yep. And he said, why don't you come to Atlanta and I'll show you how to make money out of drink bottles. So I jumped on a plane and flew to Atlanta. And bear in mind, I'd actually never left New Zealand at that stage. And that's how I got into children's drink bottles and lunch boxes, and came back and started making those.
And that grew and grew. And as we talked about earlier, we could fill this whole podcast talking about the Sistema story. But I did want to ask, for a manufacturing firm like that to survive the 80s and 90s in New Zealand was pretty unusual, because the deregulation and all that wiped out so many. How did you get through that?
It was tough, and our first moulding machine that I bought, which we put into a factory in Great South Road in Penrose, and I paid 29% interest from the Development Finance Corporation, and to be honest, I was actually really happy to get the loan, and it was a struggle, 29% interest, so every single thing, and then of course I bought one, and then I bought another one, and I think I paid 31% interest on my second machine. And today, when we look at paying 2 and 3% for money for mortgages, what happened really for me was in the GFC was really tough, 87, but in the 90s is really when I learnt a lot of lessons about debt.
Yep.
And I decided I'd never ever buy another machine unless I could actually write a check for it, because I was frightened I was going to lose everything.
Yep.
So I refused to borrow money on moulding machines or robots or conveyors or whatever. If I could afford it, I bought it. Otherwise, I didn't. That stood me in really good stead in years to come.
So that's what, organic growth, what they would call just
organic
taking
growth.
One step at a time.
One step at a time, which of course meant the growth was a bit slower.
Yep.
But the banks didn't have capacity in those days, or not capacity, but they used to say things like I was overtrading.
Yep.
BNZ foreclosed on me. Well, they offered, said they were going to foreclose on me. I had a lot of trouble getting money because money was just so tight.
Yeah, and it is capital intensive, isn't it? You need the machines to make the product.
They're capital intensive, and you know what? They break down.
Yeah, that's right, I bet.
And you know, we were working 24 hours a day, and working. You know, we were basically working all day and all night. You know, trying to keep these things going, because every hour they worked was another $30 type thing.
Wow.
You know, so it was. But you know, once again, they were tough times, but they were good times.
Yeah.
You know.
So you felt like you had I guess it's a team feeling, isn't it? If you feel like you've got a team that's heading in one direction, you can enjoy things even if it's pretty hard work.
Oh, it was good fun, and you know, I remember I bought we had a building in at Church Street, and it was very hot inside because the machines put off a lot of heat. So I went and bought a second-hand fan from this fella, and it was a big industrial thing, and it weighed a ton. I don't know how much it weighed, but we lifted it up on top of the building, and to put the fan on top of the building, and it fell through the roof because no one ever told me that you needed to put, it needed to be structurally safe. Yeah. Oh, God knows how somebody didn't get killed. But, you know, that was the sort of cowboy stuff that you were doing. Yeah.
But look, it grew and grew. I mean, we all started to see these lunch boxes with the click-clack sides. You know, you eventually got Australasia, and how far did Sistema go before? How big was it before you sold?
Well, when we sold, we were exporting to 110 countries around the world. But you know, one of the great stories and milestones about Sistema, I guess, is that we were buying all our raw material out of Korea from Samsung, and a really good relationship with them. But we were buying raw material from Korea, making a plastic lunch or storage container. And sending it back to Korea and selling it at retail. Yeah, you know, and that's quite an amazing thing, because I used to say to people that, you know, the container was sort of free. It was the New Zealand air that you're actually buying. Yeah. And you know, I learnt through my selling, and I travelled the world a lot. I didn't go to every country we sold to, because we deal through distributors and agents. But that made in New Zealand thing is a major thing, and people just don't fully appreciate how strong the New Zealand ink brand is. Yeah, because this is the value add story that we talk a lot about in this country, right? You're buying a raw material, you're using a bit of know-how and some hard work in New Zealand to add value and export to the world. Well, I think New Zealanders, we tend to undersell ourselves a wee bit, and you know, we have a little bit of that number 8 wife, you know, mentality, which, you know, if it's not broken, we don't need to worry about fixing it type thing. But I do quite a bit of business mentoring where people come to see me either for an investment, but really more importantly, what do I think? And I make it very clear when they sit down. I'll give you some of my time, but I'm going to tell you exactly what I think. And 9 out of 10 of them do not understand how important that made in New Zealand brand is. Right. That's amazing. Yeah. And it's a really. I had a guy came to see me recently with a beverage business. Yep. And he was telling me about how he was going to export it to various countries around the world. And I said, why wouldn't you put Made in New Zealand on it? Yeah, yeah. And he said, oh, well, people won't buy Made in New Zealand. And I said, you are so wrong. Yeah, yeah. And so did you got out there and initially plowed the sort of course with the sales and marketing side of it? Were you out there doing the deals yourself? I did a lot of deals, and I travelled the world, and we, you know, look, it's traveling is great when you first start off, because there's this excitement. There's excitement of getting to the hotel and excitement of everything. But after a while, I just couldn't wait to get home. And even when I got to the airport, I just wanted to come home. Yeah. And that was one of the reasons that got me in the end with selling the business. I just couldn't do it anymore. You know, and yes, I'm sitting at the front of the plane and all those bits and pieces, but it's really hard work when I missed birthdays, I missed school events, I missed anniversaries, because the business always seemed to not so much come first, but it always seemed to be at the wrong time. When something was going on, whether a trade fair or whatever. But, you know, I guess in COVID it makes things a little bit difficult, but I'm the old school. I felt that you really needed to sit in front of somebody. Face to face. They needed to hear that New Zealand accent. Yep. They needed to understand that you're really committed, and you wanted to make this work. You know, it wasn't just about buying and selling. It was about how can I build a long-term relationship? Yeah. And all your major retailers around the world, you know, your Tesco's and Asda and, you know, Carrefour in France. I mean, I've been to all those retailers, and that's what I sold the business on the back of those relationships.
Yeah, I don't think Zoom works. That's why, I mean, you can see why, touch wood, get out of this COVID thing as soon as possible, and hopefully a lot of that will come back, the face-to-face. So anyway, we get to the point where you've got a multinational business. There's plenty written about the sale and that a lot of money was made. Suddenly you find yourself at a stage in life where sort of you've got all this opportunity. Did you sit back and go, what do I do now?
Well, we did, and we settled the business on the 1st of, we settled on the 4th of August, 4th of April, and the reason being was that was my wedding anniversary.
Right,
I wanted to settle that day. But funny thing was that we didn't actually want for anything, and I'm not sort of being flippant about it. But we
built a good business, and you had
we had a nice car, and all the other bits and pieces. So I didn't want to go and I didn't need to go and buy a helicopter because I don't want a helicopter. So the whole thing is, what do you do now? And when you wake up one morning and you've got 700 people working for you, and the next day you've got none, it's sort of like, what am I going to do? And I spent 9 months thinking about. And we talked and talked and talked and talked and talked. And I said to my wife, we'll buy a house in the south of France. And she said, well, that's a good idea. What for? No one's going to come and visit us. Type thing is, well, that was a stupid idea. Oh, okay, well, we could, but it was sort of like, you know what? We're actually happy with doing what we're doing. Yeah.
So she sounds like she might have been a fairly solid business partner through the years, a source of advice.
Well, they say behind every successful man is either an ambitious woman or a successful woman in her own right. But look, I've been very lucky with my wife, because she supported everything I've done. Not everything, but you know what? They're the ones that sort of straighten you up every time you go off the rails.
Yeah, that's always good. But you have, you've kept your world, I guess your life fairly similar, but you have started doing some different things. You bought the Cambridge Stud. You're a passionate horse fan, breeder. Racing industry is one of your favourite things.
We bought Cambridge off Sir Patrick Hogan, and we were lucky that he was at a time of life that he wanted to sell. Patrick and Justine Hogan. But look, we needed to do something together. And Cambridge Stud was a perfect opportunity for us. We love racing horses, and we like breeding, the whole industry. But it was an opportunity for my wife and I to actually do something together. And it's animals are quite a leveler in lots of ways. When you have success, it's fantastic. But when you have heartbreak, and whether they get injured or die or something, it is a leveler, and they don't know how much. How much money you've got or what you did this. They're only interested in one thing, is being looked after, and we're very big on animal welfare, and we've got an opportunity that we can wander around the paddock together and have a chat about things. And every horse you breed, you think of him or her as the next champion. But there's not many champions out there.
I mean, it's not a cheap business. It's probably that sounds like it's one of the things about having some money is that's where you've been able to enjoy it, is indulge that passion for horses and animals. You can.
It's not a cheap business. The business now, it only just now we've got it to the stage where it pays for itself, so we don't having to put more money into it. It doesn't give us a return on investment in terms of dollars, but it does give us a return on investment in terms of personal enjoyment.
Yeah, well, that's it, isn't it? I mean, I think you've touched on it already, but one of the questions I ask is, is money in itself a motivation for you? And it sounds like you get to a point where you've got the house, the mortgage covered, and the rest of it, and it's not the sum in the bank that's driving you.
No, and look, when you've obviously got a fair chunk of money that we have, you can be quite flippant about it, but the reality is that. What gets anybody out of bed is personal challenges. And, whether you're running a marathon or whether you're in business, what I've found in my life is I'm actually quite good at business. And I wasn't sure after I sold Sistema whether I was a one-hit wonder. And I was worried about that. And it played on my mind.
Pretty big hit, though.
It was a pretty big hit. But I didn't want to be the bloke that was just remembered for that. But I also figured that if I could we could make some investments, and we can actually give that money away, or can help other people, or there's a way for us to improve other people's lifestyle without handing them a lot of checks.
So you've started, it's the Lindsay Foundation, right?
Yeah.
I guess is it sort of, I don't know if it's model, but like the Tyndall Foundation, that kind of model for being involved in the kind of philanthropic work you do?
Very much on the Tyndall. We had meetings with the Tyndall Foundation. We've had meetings with a number of the different foundations to try and understand the giving space. It's quite a complicated space.
Yep.
We've got somebody that looks after the foundation for us, and Joe and I decided that any money that we made on our investments that we would put into the foundation. So we make some money, we can actually put more money into the foundation. We've told our children that they are not going to share our wealth and divide it by 4.
Yeah.
So we want to try and make a difference. It's sometimes hard.
Yeah.
There's quite a bit of publicity at the moment with the pet refuge, which Joe and I underwrote that whole build, and we would like that to be extended right through the whole of New Zealand. It's a terrible thing, domestic violence, and particularly violence against a human being, but also how cats and dogs predominantly used.
Yep.
We can make a difference to somebody's life. We're quite sure about that, but we can't do it ourselves. We need other people to partner up with us.
Yeah. So presumably there's quite a lot of work involved, because it really isn't. You want what you do with the money to be successful. There's no point just giving it away and watching it.
Well, that's the trouble with it, and I remember I had a meeting with Sam Morgan of Trade Me, and he said made a statement about bang for your buck, and I took that a little bit offensive at the time. I thought, oh my God, it's a charity. Yeah, sounds like business, but he was actually right. Yep. We need to do our due diligence. We need to make sure that we are making a difference, and money is just not get wasted on fees or costs or salaries, and it actually hits the mark that you're trying to hit. Sam was actually fantastic, and he's got a charity called the Jasmine Fund, and I think they've given 70 or 80 million away. Yep. So it tells you, and the Tyndalls are great as well. I mean, Stephen Tyndall, it's not hard to see why he's New Zealander of the year. What they've done is just fantastic. Yeah. So
you've got 4 kids. 4 kids, and so obviously they're going to be all right. But you must have felt, and I know Bill Gates has done something a bit like this too. He doesn't want the kids to. There's almost more problems to be that rich. He wants them to be motivated to do their own thing in life as well.
And look, somebody once said to me, you can't make a silk purse out of a sow's ear. In other words, you can't change people. But what we've tried to do with our children is be transparent. Yep. We try to treat. We don't try. We treat them all equally. Yep. But you know what? They're all different. Yeah. And you've got 4 different personalities,
different passions. Yeah.
But we're transparent about what we do and whatever. The biggest enjoyment that we've had, I guess, is family holidays. Being able to go away and do something together. We went to Queenstown not recently, and we stayed in a really nice hotel, which is beyond the resources of my 4 children. Yeah. And they wouldn't go down and stay in a really nice hotel and go off and do things. Hey, that's how Dad's money should be enjoyed. Let's do it together. Yeah. Rather than going and buying them the hotel. I don't think that's really the answer.
Well, it keeps a more normal family relationship, doesn't it? I mean, that is kind of, the sort of normal order of things. And, I guess that's one of the risks with lots of money you see, I don't know, in Hollywood and America, is that things get weird. You don't really, you're old enough to have sort of seen that there's some things that really ground you in life, and then those are the things that matter.
Well, I think that a lot of people try and use money as a tool. Yeah. If you're nice to me, I'll give you that. Yeah. Money's just a commodity. Yes, it's easy to say that when you've got some of it, but at the end of the day, we all, money doesn't buy you more steaks. Yeah. You've still got to get up and take the rubbish. Somebody's got to take it up the drive, and I'm the fellow that's doing that now. Our children need to understand that, which we know they do. We can. They need to understand that if they want things, they need to save. They need to make sacrifices. Daddy's just not going to be there. We're just not an FPOS card for their lives.
Yeah. And so, not really to get into politics and things, but another question I like to ask people is if you were suddenly had all the power, is there something you would change in New Zealand with a view to, I guess, helping more people get out of poverty? Tough question.
I can't really get into politics because, I've got quite strong views about different things, but it was not appropriate for me to tell, the government how to run New Zealand or whatever. But I'm strongly of the opinion that I agreed with John Key when he wanted to change the New Zealand flag and put the silver fern on it. I think that the Made in New Zealand thing is the most important thing for our country.
Yep.
I think we are extremely lucky with and without the current events where this is God's own country. There's only 5 million of us. We bat above our weight in business and sport and every single thing that we do, and yet we don't yell and scream about it enough. And I know that you can't yell too much, but what makes a difference, you can't lead from the top. You have to lead from the bottom. And you have to get these children that are coming through the schooling system to realise how important that they are in building New Zealand around us. One of the things about New Zealanders is a lot of New Zealanders have made a lot of money out of our country and doing different things. Most of them go and live somewhere else.
Yeah.
They go and get in there, go and live in Switzerland or something like that, and they live this fantastic lifestyle. A lot of New Zealanders actually desert their country when they've made their money. What we've got to do is encourage people to stay in this country. And wealth's not a dirty word, it's not a dirty thing, but we've got to encourage these children that they come through the school and realise how important New Zealand can be not on a world stage, but in a stage for ourselves.
It's kind of self-confidence, isn't it?
Self-confidence. Yep. And, whether you're making peanut butter like Peter Pickers down in Nelson, why can't Peter Pick sell Nelson-made peanut butter to the world? It tastes good enough.
Yep.
But, you know what I mean? And I think we've got to believe that. And that's what I think, that if we can somehow, I don't think governments can do that, but
it is a tough cultural issue, isn't it? That New Zealand's sort of always had that, whether you call it tall poppy or that slight self-deprecating thing that it just seems to hold us back at the key moment.
I think I've got tall poppy in every society. I think the trouble is the bar's so much lower in New Zealand.
Right.
But, if you're a billionaire in China, you're just one of 100 billionaires. You're a billionaire in New Zealand, you're one of one or 5. If you're a billionaire in America, no one takes too much notice of you.
Yeah,
but when you're a multi-billionaire, everybody knows you. But I think that our bar's a bit lower in New Zealand in terms of wealth, and I don't think you need to be embarrassed about it. But it's of course it's on the back of your mind all the time, because some folk just don't do as well as we've done, and it is very difficult.
Yeah, that's right.
And housing's one of those things. It shouldn't be a right that every New Zealander has a house, but it should be. This country is the best country in the world. Why is it we've got people living in caravans?
Crazy, isn't it?
It's just not right. And why is it that people can't afford to get free medical or free dental or whatever? And if you get sick, why can't you go to have an operation? That's what our country should be doing. Yeah.
All right, Brendan. Well, we've run through a lot actually, but I just going to ask you what's next, and what are the things that, if you were talking about what you wanted to, with the Lindsay Foundation, and what's coming up in the next year that's going to keep you busy?
Look, we donated some money to their air Starship for their air ambulance.
Yeah.
And we've now just bought a share of the company that actually flies the ambulance, the airline, if you like. So we'll get a dividend, and we'll give that dividend to Starship. So that'll be self-funding in perpetuity for Starship. Those are the sorts of things that we'd like to do. And, Starship Hospital, the air ambulance, some kiddies just can't get to hospital. We would like to, there's lots of charities we're involved in, there's lots of things we'd like to do, and some of them are really, really cool. Some of them are quite heartbreaking, but we're out at Eden. I was out at Eden Park on Wednesday night with the 3 Barrett boys and the ups and downs, which is Down syndrome children. Can you imagine mum and dad, whoever they may be, having a little Down syndrome child? And those Barrett boys were just fantastic, how they threw around the ball on the park and all that. That's the highlight in our life, just seeing those little kids and those guys, All Blacks devoting their time. We'd like to do a bit more of that sort of stuff and just enjoy it.
That's great. And ironically, you sort of have got yourself the helicopter, but in a very different way.
Yeah. Oh, look, I think that I don't really know, I guess what I went and had a look at a new car on Saturday, but I don't actually want a new car.
Yeah.
I was sort of looking for something to do. I spend hours and hours and hours in the vegetable garden.
Yeah.
I grow a lot of vegetables. I get a lot of enjoyment out of growing vegetables. We can't eat them. I have to give them away.
Yeah.
But I really enjoy the simple things of life, of walking around the garden in a pair of rugby shorts, is what I prefer to do.
That's great, Brendan. Look, thanks for that, and thanks for listening. If you've got feedback, drop me a line at liam.dann@nzherald.co.nz. And if you want to hear more of these, please subscribe at iHeartRadio or wherever you get your podcasts.